What's going on, everybody? You're listening to episode 11 of the Point NHL Recap Show. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined alongside Mark Howlerlack. Mark, how we doing this week, man?
Buddy, pretty good. We're only a couple days to Christmas now.
Oh, yeah.
Only got a couple shifts left at work, so pretty pumped for the holidays. I know you're probably getting ready to go to Calgary in the next couple days. Should be pretty fun. You going to a Flames game too, right?
Oh, dude, I'm looking so forward to it. Who are they playing? Kraken, I believe.
Oh, that'll be pretty sick to see them for the first time.
Yep.
But yeah, that'll be pretty good for you to go to that, honestly. I'd love to get out to Calgary one time, though, but...
It's a great city. I love it. Anybody that talks about it, I tell them it's a great city. I don't know if I want to go to
the Saddle Dome, though. I feel like I want to wait until they make a new arena.
For sure you want to do that.
I've been to Pittsburgh's arena, and I've also been to Detroit's arena, and ever since they've broken them down and have a new venue, so it's like I almost didn't go to their venue yet. So I feel like once I go to Calgary, it's going to be when their new venue's out. But yeah, man, we don't really have like a whole lot to talk about with the NHL this week. I think we're just going to get into like just starting talking about the Ottawa Senators right away. Obviously, like there's some pretty
big news.
Yeah, pretty big news, I would say. Obviously, like it's kind of expected. We've talked about like DJ Smith was let go. I believe, wasn't it on Monday? He was surprisingly, he was. Did you see he was actually running practice?
Yeah, so
in the morning, and then he was let go.
He was running practice that morning, and then he was fired. And then Jacques Martin, he's going to be taken over as the interim head coach, and also Daniel Alfredson is going to be joining his coaching staff as an assistant head coach. But yeah, it was weird that he was running the practice in the morning. Like, you'd think that if they were thinking about firing him, they would have known the night before and maybe not let him run practice or given him the news beforehand.
That was super strange because they're on the middle of a road trip, right? Like, they just played the Coyotes last night. Obviously, Martin and Alfredson just getting into the mix yesterday, kind of thrown in the fire. Not even really like a real practice with the team, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know about yourself, but I actually was like really interested in it, so I watched most of the game last night. Ottawa actually looked quite different. They were getting like outshot, but they were playing that way more defensive style that I think that they want to play. But what Alfredson was talking about was that they play good a lot of these games, and then it's like 5-10 minutes, they'll let in 3 or 4 goals, and it just ruins the game. The same thing happened yesterday, though, man. And they didn't respond well. Korpisalo let in a kind of a squeaker. It was 3-2. They tie it 3-3, and then a couple minutes left, Arizona takes the lead, and they win the game. So it's 5 straight losses for the Sens. Obviously, it's just one game with this new coaching staff, but I expect a lot more like defensive style with this team coming in.
Oh,
that's the way Jacques Martin has coached in the past. I will say, though, too, I don't know if Martin is like going to be the interim the rest of the season. I am convinced that they're still out there looking for someone, and even Martin probably knows, like, okay, like I'm probably just going to be here and maybe go back to coaching advisor. Obviously, with like Alfredson, I'm sure he's fully on board with this, and I think that's the reason why they made this move during the season, because it seemed like they didn't really want to make this move. Like we've been talking over since they had this new ownership, like they haven't been too consistent, but it took 4 straight losses for them to finally be like, you know what, this is enough. Like we're supposed to be like a good team this year, and we're in last in the Eastern Conference right now. Like, what do you think about it? Like, I obviously we talked about like we're on the side of we thought DJ should get fired. I don't like going for guys' jobs. It sucks, you know what I mean? Like, but I mean, like, it doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to be fired just because he's a nice guy. You know what I mean? I hope he ends up getting a job elsewhere, but I mean, like, in my opinion, this team needs change. I think they need more of like a hard-nosed coach coming in.
They need some structure to them.
And I think getting Alfie in there, a guy who's like a Hall of Famer and spent so much time in Ottawa, it's just like he's talking about the little details in their game that they've been screwing up. And I think that some of these guys are really going to have to like pay attention to this. And I don't know if they were like in the sense of like walking all over DJ Smith, but it's Smith's first job, right? You know what I mean? He's got these high-end skilled players. I can see how the attention to details kind of weren't there. But now with Alfie, it's like, dude, I've been watching the past 2 years with St. Louis coming in, right? And like how much he's changed the way Montreal plays. Obviously, Alfie's not the head coach, but I expect kind of similar things to happen, where like Ottawa's going to be playing a lot different style of a game. The thing with them is, though, dude, is like it's not the end of the world if they don't make the playoffs, but like they really should be making the playoffs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's another year? Like, if they start playing better, great. But it's like I think personally, if they miss again, like there should be some like changes happening with players on their team, and they realize that. They know the next changes that are coming are in the room, man. Like your coach is gone, your GM's gone, and next it's you, man. Like you know what I mean. So I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out with Ottawa. Obviously, not a great start with this new tenure yesterday, but they played the least amount of games in the NHL. They have games in hand. It's not looking great, but I mean, there's still tons of time. Like Edmonton got themselves back into the mix. I know they're not in the playoffs, but Ottawa still has time to do the same, but they're going to have to play at a pretty high pace the rest of the season.
They're going to have to play at a really good winning percentage, right?
Like they're probably going to have to play at a pace where they're winning like 50 wins. Like, you know what I mean? Almost to be able to get in. Man, I'd like for them to get in. I think it would be pretty cool. They haven't been in the playoffs in a while. I'd love to see Brady Tkachuk in the playoffs. I'm not convinced it's going to happen this year, though.
I'm not convinced it's going to happen either. But when you look at Ottawa, what I think that really put them over the edge and made them sort of decide to fire DJ Smith was just the fact that like it had gotten so bad, man. Like their owner, I forget his name right now, but their owner, Michael Andlauer, thank you. Michael Andlauer, he was really saying that like they didn't want to make a coaching change because there was already enough like instability within the team. But like if this team goes home after this road trip, after they've been performing these last few weeks, like dude, those fire DJ chants are gonna get louder and louder and louder. And I don't think they could have gone home to that. So
I think that this like unique situation came up where Martin was like, he's brought in, he's probably like, listen, I'll take over the team for now. Alfie's on board with it, and it's the same. It's exactly what you're saying. Like, I don't think they're gonna go out and hire like Craig Berube or Woodcroft.
They're gonna wait till
at
the
least till they get a GM.
Yeah, I think they'll wait till the off season. In the off, like when they bought the team, they didn't buy the team until late in the summer, right? So like when they were coming in, they didn't have the time to make that many changes before the season. So I think they'll want to go into the summer and really be able to treat this next summer as like this is our first like official full
the thing to do is
year of owning the team.
It's been pretty chaotic for this new owner.
Oh, it's been
it's
been brutal.
I was seeing that Staios was hired at September 28th. Dorian was fired like just a couple weeks after, and then we're talking December, or not too long, a couple days ago, obviously like DJ's gone. So it's like within 6 weeks, you've lost your GM, you've lost your coach.
They lost.
You haven't replaced your GM.
They lost a draft pick in there with all the whole Dadonov situation.
Exactly. So I mean, it's been pretty chaotic for Ottawa. They're obviously hoping and looking to get a new arena built somewhere else as well. So there's a lot of work to be done with this team. But I mean, I don't see major changes coming with at least players and a new coach besides Martin until they get a full-time GM.
The only guy I could maybe see them pushing for is Craig Berube now that he's on the market, because I think he'd fit in perfectly with the Ottawa Senators. He's been there and done it with the St. Louis Blues, where that team was god-awful January 1st, and they went on and won the Stanley Cup.
He kind of turned their...
Not saying Ottawa's going to come back and win the Stanley Cup this year, but like he's done it before, and if he comes into Ottawa, like you could see that change where maybe they do sneak in the playoffs or make a pretty decent run towards the end of the season. I think we should move on, though, to what we really came here for today. It's the World Juniors. It's the holiday season. World Juniors start up on Boxing Day. I'm absolutely pumped up about this. I know you're looking really forward to this. So the groups are as follows. Group A, it's Team Canada, Finland, Germany, Latvia, and Sweden. And Group B is Czechia, Norway, Slovakia, Switzerland, and the United States. Of course, listing off those teams there, still no Russia. Before we start to break down all these other teams, like what do you think about the whole Russia not playing in these international tournament situation that's going on right now?
I mean, like I wish it was to a point where they could rejoin, because I'd like to see them compete, but
they would have
I
a
think
good
there's
team
just
this
too
year,
many
dude.
like legal things going on with like probably people entering like another country and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just like I'm kind of accustomed to them like not being in it, at least for like the near future. So it's like, I guess it doesn't really bother me as much. I saw like a guy on Twitter kind of did a mock World Junior Russia team if they were eligible.
It would have been a nasty team.
They would have had a really good team for sure. They would have had a very good team, but I mean, there's nothing really you could do about it, right? It'd be cool to watch like Michkov in there, right? Obviously, he'd be sent.
Samadov. There's the two kids that were drafted top 10 last year to Arizona.
And like even Gulyayev last year. So they would have a really good team. But I'm just kind of used to them at this point, like not being in it.
Yeah. For
at least the near future, even like this with the NHL, like possible World Cup of Hockey coming. I don't really expect them to be kind of in that either. But I'm pretty pumped for this World Juniors. Honestly, man, as much as like we're in Canada and we love hockey here, I love when the World Juniors is in Europe. I think the atmosphere and the buildings are so much better. I just kind of look back to, I think it was 2015 or 16, whenever it was in Finland and Canada lost to Finland in the quarters. It was like Laine versus Marner almost.
Oh, yeah.
And Finland ended up winning on home ice when Kapanen got that wraparound goal. I thought it was like electric watching those games. One thing I love about it too is obviously Europe's 6 hours ahead. You get hockey going on like from right when you wake up in the morning, and then you also, if you want to watch the NHL, there's no World Juniors going on at night, right? So it's like Canada plays on Boxing Day, I think at like 8:30 or 9 Eastern. So like I'm pretty excited to watch. I'm excited to watch it though. They're playing Finland, so it's gonna be a really good game right off the bat. So kind of just going into a little bit more. Like I've dug deep and like looked into like the rosters and stuff because I'm really into World Juniors every single year. I love watching it. Obviously, Canada has been, for the most part at least of like my life, watching this, been like pretty much a powerhouse. Like from 2005 to 2009, like they're winning 5 in a row. They didn't get one for a couple years, but they're looking to get their 3rd straight gold medal this year.
I don't think it's gonna happen, man.
So yeah, I'm kind of on board with that. I will say that I think people are criticizing it a little bit too much. Like, I don't think that their team is like bad or anything. I just think that there is some guys that they're missing out on because they've kind of taken that next step to go to the NHL. Like you were mentioning some guys earlier.
I have the list to here. So Canada is going to be without Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Shane Wright, Kevin Korchinski, and Zach Benson. Like you add those.
So also one other guy you're forgetting is Wyatt Johnson could potentially go.
I guess he could.
He could technically go still. So I'm pretty positive he could go. So,
but it's like, man, you add those guys to this team, dude. Like they're without a doubt the favorites. You're just missing that top end talent because all Canada's top end talent is better than the U.S.'s top end. So playing in the NHL right now, making a difference there.
I will say them getting Matt Poitras is a big help. That's a guy
addition.
Guy's playing NHL games this year for the Bruins. He's actually been like not just playing, but he's been a solid addition to their team, right?
And their Bruins are a good team, man. Like the fact that he's on the roster, like it's not like he's on.
And that's what they said since day one was that Montgomery was like, look, like we're not just happy with a kid coming in and playing. Like he deserves to be playing on this team, and that's why he's staying here past these 9 games. I think this is good for him to go to the World Juniors though too. I kind of expected either him or Benson to go after Canada cut one more guy than they like technically should have. You know what I mean? Going into this tournament. Like, going through some other guys, though, like, there's still some really exciting players to kind of keep an eye on. Like, Macklin Celebrini, he's supposed to go 1st overall this year. I would say, as of now, he's definitely the favorite to go 1st overall. Obviously, I don't think it's as big of a gap as we're talking about between, like, Bedard to Carlson or Fantilli, as in I think like Cole Eiserman's probably going 2, and it's not that big of a gap as last year, but I would still say Celebrini's most likely going 1st overall. He's putting up almost 2 points a game at the college level this year for Boston University.
As a 17-year-old for the entire season.
Exactly,
as well.
And like he's being compared to Fantilli already, right? So it's like I would expect him to be. I think he pretty much is NHL ready already, this kid, and he's just not even drafted yet, right? He's a guy to keep an eye on. Matthew Savoie, he played a game with the Sabres this year.
Yeah,
he plays for the Wenatchee Wild in WHL. He's a really solid prospect for the Sabres. He went top 10 a couple years ago. He's a guy to keep an eye on. The one thing with them that's going to be really interesting is their goaltending.
I was going to ask you
They
about
only
that.
have one guy that is like NHL property. That's Scott Ratzlaff. He was drafted by the Sabres last year. But they're dealing with Matthias Rousseau and Samuel St. Hilaire, 2 guys that are playing in Quebec, and they're actually having really good seasons in Quebec this year. I'm pretty sure Rousseau's like got like a .935 save percentage, and like St. Hilaire's up in the high 900s as well, like 920. I will say though, comparing it to like some other teams, like I really like like just kind of flip-flopping between them and the States almost for comparisons. Like, I really like the States goaltending this year. They have two guys that were just drafted this year in Trey Augustine and Jacob Fowler. These guys are both playing NCAA. Fowler's like been one of the best goalies in NCAA so far this year. I know we're just kind of flip-flopping back from US and Canada, but like I just really like USA's roster. I think that at least roster-wise, they are the favorite in this tournament. We're talking about like some high-end talent on this team, man. Like Cutter Gauthier, like this kid could probably step into the NHL. Guys from last year, like drafted high, like Gabe Perreault, Ryan Leonard, Will Smith. Another guy who's eligible in 2024 drafted defenseman Zeev Buim. He's supposed to go like top 10 or 15. Their anchor back there, though, is definitely Lane Hudson, in my opinion.
Yeah,
he is so sick, man. USA's really deep. The thing that was weird about them, us obviously watching Kitchener a lot, no Hunter Bruskevich is very surprising to me. I didn't really expect him to go in and even play on the top pair. I thought it was going to be more Hudson, and then I don't know if you know Seamus Casey. He's a Devils prospect. And then I thought like Bruskevich would kind of be on that second pair, but the thing is, I don't even know if you can make the argument of he plays in the O, because we're talking about they have three other guys on their team that play in the OHL.
Well, I was talking to somebody at work, like Liam at work, who's sort of done some internships throughout the OHL, and he was saying the difference between the guys that are on the team in the OHL and Bruskevich was the guys that are in the OHL that are American, that are on the team, those guys didn't turn down the USNDP, where Bruskevich like did turn down the USNDP and went to the OHL.
So Bruskevich, he obviously had the option.
Yeah, so I think that's where there's
so they still have the problem with it. Yeah, essentially.
I think it's the fact that like Bruskevich turned down the USNDP and decided to go to the Rangers. Where like Kerry Terrence, for instance, I don't think he was
never offered it. Yeah,
the USNDP.
Well, Kerry Terrence is a good player too, right? He was drafted in the second round last year. He's scoring quite a bit for Erie this year, who are not the greatest team either, right? The weird thing I thought was that their third goalie, I think his name's Hildebrandt or something, he's on Barrie.
I believe so.
He was not actually originally offered the spot. It was Andrew Oak, who's on Saginaw. And he was the third goalie for the juniors the past 2 seasons, and he turned it down this year because he was like, I don't want to go and be the third goalie again. Yeah. And it got put out in public, so it kind of sucks for this kid a bit, like knowing that he wasn't really like the first option. But to be quite honest with you, barring injury, I don't think he's seeing a single second of ice anyway.
Yeah.
Like going over some other teams though, the one team
before we move on to these other teams, I first want to ask you a question for the U.S. and Canada, who we've already touched on. I'll start off with Canada. Who's their top forward, do you think, in the tournament? Do you think it's Celebrini, or do you think it's one of these like older guys?
I would say like it's hard to not say Patra because he's had the NHL experience, but I kind of think Celebrini.
For me, it's either Potter or Celebrini. It depends on where they plan on playing Celebrini and like how much he can improve throughout the tournament.
I'm curious to see whether he's going to play center or wing as well, because they have a lot of options at center, especially now bringing back Patra, and I assume that Patra's playing center because he's played there with the Bruins, right? I think it's more Boston was like, you have to play this kid at center too. Like if we're sending him, like. He's guaranteed top 6 minutes, like, you know what I mean?
First power play,
like Grant Clark, when he was sent down from LA last year, LA said, like, we're not sending him unless you're playing him on the top.
Yeah, I think it's probably Matt Potter, just with his NHL experience. Maybe like in 10 years when all these players in their primes, like, we're going to look back and be like, Celebrini was the best player on this team, but just the age difference and the readiness, I think it's Potter. What about defensemen? Who do you think the best defenseman is?
Honestly, I just had to get the list up because I didn't really want to forget anyone.
Yeah.
The one guy that I like a lot is Tristan Lanoux with the Ducks.
Okay.
He's played a couple games for them this year. He was kind of sent down the same way as Patra was, just not playing as much, but he's kind of one of those young D that Anaheim have in their core. I think another really good D for them is Matejchuk.
Yeah, I like him a lot for
He's
Columbus.
A Blue Jackets prospect. He's got a real high offensive upside. I wouldn't be surprised if he's playing on that top pair, to be quite honest with you. I think the one guy, I wouldn't say he's like the best defenseman on the team, but you're going to be really surprised with his skating is Tanner Molendyk. He was drafted by the Preds last year, and this kid's an incredible skater, dude. I thought he was potentially going to go higher. He went... I think 24th overall last year, but I wasn't really that high on him going to the draft, and I like went back and watched this kid a bit. Man, he's got like a motor on him. Like he's got such great edges. So I'm curious to see if they kind of just let him go free and just skate up the ice. You know what I mean? Like kind of what US has done with Luke Hughes and like Lane Hudson in the past. But even up front, man, like these guys, I think I was trying to move on from Canada a little bit too fast there. But like Jordan Dumais, dude,
They're
that guy,
deep, man. They're deep.
They do have a deep team, right? It's just like, I don't know, besides like Celebrini, and I guess you can say Poitras, it's like they don't really have like high end talent, I guess, that they've had in past years with like Stankoven and Bedard and Fantilli and like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Matt Savoie, we were already talking about him. I think he's going to be a really big factor in this tournament. I would say more on the two-way side as a Habs fan. Like, I really like Owen Beck. He is a great guy for like winning faceoffs, really good on the penalty kill. He's got a really good shot. I think he's going to be like one of those guys that you're kind of seeing doing the little things throughout the tournament. Probably not offensively as much, but I think he's going to be a key part and definitely a guy you need on your team if you want to win a tournament like this. There's still some surprising names like left off, I think. Like, I don't know if you know Bradley Nadeau.
Yeah.
He plays the U of Maine. This guy's tearing it up this year. Never even got invited to camp.
That was a bit of a controversy.
So now with the lineup, so Canada played Denmark, their U25 team, yesterday in like a pre-tournament game, and now they're saying since Poitras got sent back, there's a pretty high possibility that Carson Rakoff's the 13th forward, which does suck a little bit. Considering like we watch Kitchener, you know what I mean? He's having an electric season right now with the Rangers. I'm kind of surprised though, man. Like he's been debatably the best player in junior hockey this year. I'm surprised that he's kind of like out of the lineup, I guess. But I mean, it's not like he's not going to play. He's going to get that opportunity. He can seize that opportunity and then like not look back. You know what I mean?
I think he could take over Easton Cowan. Like Easton Cowan's
been good though.
I was hearing that like the like management coaches from Team Canada were sort of saying like they wanted to see more from him during the camp. But like, as much as we've been saying this team's like not as good as years past, like I don't know, dude. They still look pretty good. Like Connor Geeky's.
That's what I mean.
Connor Geeky's another guy I really like. Arizona Coyotes prospect. Like Braden Yeager. He fell in the draft a fair bit, fell all the way to Pittsburgh last year.
No, and he's been pretty good in junior this year.
And then Jordan Dumais, like a guy, what did he go, third round, I believe?
Yeah, and he's been putting up points in the queue.
Dude, he led the queue last year in scoring. Like, he looks like a really phenomenal player. It's just he's, like, super undersized, but... Like there's like that guy's not a third round draft. Like that guy's not a third round draft.
No, I know, and I think he's definitely going to be like a full time. He might as early as next year might get a shot with the Blue Jackets. One guy, man, that I'm really curious to like see because I have not seen a lot of is this Owen Allard kid.
I've never heard of this kid.
Undrafted. He's 19. I looked up his stats. He had never had a good season until this year, and this year he's putting up about a point a game average. I know right after he got selected to Canada, he had like a hat trick for the Sioux. I don't really know much about him, so I'm kind of curious to see where he's going to fit in and kind of what Canada sees in him over like some other guys that were like potentially not drafted. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm curious to see if he brings a different element to the game that like a lot of guys don't have. You know what I mean? Because it's a very strange pick for Canada. Usually other years you'd be like a guy is either drafted to the NHL or eligible. Like it hasn't even like, you know what I mean, like Celebrini, where it's like he hasn't even been picked yet. But this kid, like he's gone through the draft twice, never been picked. Kind of curious why this year is he good for Canada. You know what I mean? So
I think what Canada's probably trying to do a bit this year with when you look at the roster comparison between them and the US is Canada's probably trying to go the route of having their bottom six not just be like star players, like having their bottom six being guys that can actually like play the role a little bit. And because like we have seen that issue before in like best on best tournaments where like teams fill out their rosters so much with star players that it ends up that your bottom six like isn't overly effective because like
that's why I was talking about Owen Beck,
too
right?
offensive. Like where maybe this Owen Allard kid like plays a really good defensive role. Like
that's exactly what I mean.
Penalty killing minutes and like that. Hey, maybe that's the difference between like silver and gold against the U.S. So who knows? Who knows with that roster addition? We'll really like I guess see as the tournament goes on. You good if I ask you U.S. now about players?
100%.
Okay, top forward for the U.S. I think we're going to be unanimous on this one. Same for their top defenseman. But we'll start off with their top forward. Who do you have?
Probably, just looking at the list, probably Cutter Gauthier.
I think he's the best forward in this whole tournament.
He could be, honestly. He's really good,
dude.
man.
He's NHL already, man.
He's
that guy
going to
should be
step in and play with the Flyers later this season. He is a really good player. Best D-man, I'm going Lane Hudson.
I think U.S. arguably has the best forward and the best defenseman in this tournament. Cutter Gauthier, you can argue that he's the best forward in this tournament. And Lane Hudson, like, outside of Juracek, I think, like, it's those two guys.
And that's the younger Juracek too, right?
Is it?
Yeah, so that's his brother.
Oh, okay. I thought it was.
So he's eligible to go this year in the draft. He's probably going to go top 10, 15. It's not David.
Lane Hudson is the best defenseman in this whole tournament then.
Yeah.
With the U.S., though, one of the things that I was surprised by, I know we haven't talked about this yet, though, is no Cole Eiserman, which was like, wow, we're not going to see that one.
I think they're looking at it and seeing how much talent they have up front already, and I don't know where he's going to play. Even like James Haggins, man, he almost made the team too. He's supposed to go first overall in 2025. I don't think those two guys really had a pure spot on the team, to be honest.
Yeah.
At least in a really good role where they're going to produce. Because they're like, dude, like we're not talking about like Jimmy Snuggerud. He's really good.
Yeah, he is.
Got Will Smith, Oliver Moore. Like these guys.
Well, their second line's probably going to be Smith, Moore, and
Well, I think they're going to go Smith,
Perreault, and Leonard. That's going to be their second line.
Yeah, because those guys play together at Boston College. So I think they're going to keep that.
This tournament.
Yeah, well, and Jacob Fowler, goalie. He's a Boston College goalie. USA is really good, man. I think they have such a good team. Zeev Buim, this guy who's going to get drafted this year, he's an incredible skater. Seamus Casey plays U of Michigan. Ryan Chesley, Caps prospect, more of like a defensive style player. I think like he's probably going to end up being like their third pair type guy. Drew Fortescue, he was drafted by the Rangers last year. I kind of think he's going to be on that third pair with them. So I think USA's got a really nice mix of some guys that are drafted. Like I guess where they're drafted really doesn't matter, to be honest, because it's kind of like what you do after you're drafted. But these guys are more like the last couple guys I was talking about are more mid-round guys where I think if they're making the NHL eventually, they're kind of more in that defensive role. But then we're talking about up front where like Casey and Hudson are super offensive, right? So you kind of have a good mix there. I really like to, and I think obviously not just important hockey, but in this whole tournament is like goaltending. And the thing is with these two guys is like Trey Augenstein was like a high second-round pick last year. Fowler was a high third-round pick. These guys are going to be battling for the net, dude. Like these guys both really want the net. If you look at Jacob Fowler's stats, man, I honestly think this guy should have went a lot higher in the draft. And not just saying this as a Habs fan, like he's got a .925 save percentage at Boston College this year. He's kind of one of those goalies that he's very structured, very in position, almost kind of like that Carey Price style where it's like he makes big saves, but it never looks like it's like that difficult. And I guess as a fan, that's what you want to see. And like he's kind of won at like every level he's played. He won last year in the USHL. He won before that, and I think like he played in some sort of like high school league, but obviously it's a lot bigger there, right? There are state championships and stuff. So this kid's like kind of a proven winner. If one of them kind of faults, it's like they almost have like 2 1As. Like, you know what I mean? In accordance to like some other countries, I don't know how confident I am in their goaltending compared to the US.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see who's the top team at the end, because Canada US, that's a massive debate this year. I think we should take a look. Move on to Team Sweden, though. Of course, they're without Leo Carlsson. I'm sort of surprised that the Ducks didn't send him back.
So I think they're talking about, you know how he's playing on this plan, right, where he's like scratched.
Yeah.
So now they're saying, last night I was watching a bit of the game and they said that, so you know, like his plan, he's only allowed to play 2 games a week.
Yeah.
So now they're saying they're upping him to 3 games a week, and after the new year, he's allowed to play every game.
I'd still send him back, man.
You may as well if you're not going to play him every game.
Let him go dominate this tournament against kids his own age. And the other thing is, like, Anaheim's really fallen off here in the last month or so. Like,
they've not been good whatsoever.
Yeah, so if I was Anaheim, I would have sent them back, to be honest. Who do you think the best forward on Team Sweden is, though?
At least the way they started this year, I'd probably go Jonathan Lekkerimäki with Vancouver's prospect. He plays in the SHL for Örebro, and he's like having a really good point production season. He's scoring a lot of goals as well. So I think that's kind of a guy to keep an eye on. They've got some pretty talented players in this tournament.
Otto Stenberg kid, I like him.
First round pick. Yep. Him and Lekkerimäki are first round picks. Who else here? David Edstrom. He was drafted by Vegas in the first round last year. Ogren and Osland. They've actually got a lot of first round picks on this team, man.
This is a team that, like, honestly, even
they're
this
pretty
team,
good.
Like, they could surprise you and win a gold.
The thing with Sweden has been the problem is that they went on that streak where they didn't lose a round robin game for like 12 years, and they never won a gold medal in that span. They're on home ice this year.
Yeah.
I'm not like that impressed by their roster. Like, I think it's good. But I don't know, man. Sometimes you get these like rosters that are good, not great, and they end up surprising teams.
Who was it last year? Czechia?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they looked good last year. What about best defenseman? I think it's Axel Sandin Pellikka, the Detroit
He's
prospect.
super talented. I think I'd be going really with him as well. The other like pretty good defenseman, he's more of a two-way guy, is Elias Pettersson. The same name as like
the Vancouver Canucks Elias Pettersson.
Yeah, he's not bad. He's a good two-way guy. But the other really good offensive guy, he hasn't been playing as well this year, is Tom Willander. He was drafted before Sandy and Pellikka last year. He goes to Boston College as well, I think, or Boston University, one of those two.
It looks like he goes to BU.
He's a Swedish kid. He goes there. I think he was drafted 10th overall by the Canucks last year. So he's another guy to keep an eye on. Their goaltending's like, I'm not too like sure how much I trust it, to be quite honest with you. It's obviously not like bad or anything. Probably more in the top half of like how good it is compared to the rest of the teams in the tournament. But I'd be giving like Canada and US the edge in goaltending over Sweden for sure.
I think
They've had better goaltenders in the past.
I think if you're going to tier it out, it's probably Canada, US is like 1A, 1B.
Yeah.
You're going to have Finland, Sweden, maybe another team here is that second tier. And then you're going to have a third tier, and then you're going to have sort of the bottom teams.
Yeah.
Are you going to move on to Finland?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, Finland. So, of course, we were talking about before we started recording. No Aaron Kaviorio. He's a projected lottery pick in this upcoming draft. He's injured, won't be on the team.
He's been out for a couple of months now. Kind of sucks for him.
And he's
probably going to drop in the draft because of it too. So.
And he's a Kitchener Ranger import draft.
Yeah,
too, which sucks.
I think some team's going to be happy getting him. Like, I honestly think he's going to drop out of the top 10 because of this injury.
Yeah,
and I think they'll be really happy with him because he's a very dynamic skater.
They still do have a top 10 projected player on this roster, though.
Costa Helenius.
Yeah, I was not going to pronounce that whatsoever.
Dude.
But
this kid,
I
man.
Like him. Yeah.
So he started off the year in Liga, and I think his first 17 games he had 6 or 7 points. Next 17, he had 16 points. So he's starting to put up almost a point per game. Apparently, this kid is just a beast. He's kind of like that power forward type player that's also like very good 200 feet, and he's producing. I honestly, at this point, man, he's one of those guys where it's like he's on that trajectory where it's like I wouldn't be surprised if he even enters the top 5 of the draft. I think he's probably coming in as like I don't know if he's their best forward, but I could see him making like a huge impact in this tournament. Us just going over who their like best forward, D, and goalie are. I think I would give it to him, to be quite honest, as their best forward. I just think how good he's been playing in Liga that he's going to continue it into like juniors. You know what I mean? He's been playing against men already. I think it's quite impressive, to be quite honest with you. But I actually quite like Finland's team this year. If I had to pick them over Sweden roster wise, I'd pick Finland, to be honest.
Okay.
Personally, I think Finland is a little bit better. I like their goaltending better. For defensemen, I think that Sweden might have the edge on defense a little bit. The one guy that's really good for Finland is Arttu Karkki. He plays for Sioux in the O. He was drafted last year by Vegas. Dude, like the first 25 games of the season in the O, he had 14 goals as a D.
Damn.
So, like, he's going to be, like, contributing a lot offensively to this Finnish team. I think he was, like, a pretty good pick for Vegas in the second round. But, you know, Vegas, dude, fucking the next year and a half, he might not even be there anymore. He's probably traded for something, right? But he's a good asset for Vegas to have. You know what I mean? Nonetheless, he's looking pretty good in junior right now. Are you, like, familiar with any of these Finns, really?
Dude, outside of the top players, international-wise, and then, of course, Canada and the USA, I probably know shit off these players.
So, like, some other guys,
I've
like,
heard of Emil Hemming, though.
he's supposed to go in the draft this
yeah.
year, probably in the first round as well. He's been a pretty good player. One guy I will say...
They do have a decent amount of draft picks on this team, though. Like, looking at the roster breakdown you've done for the show
so
here.
if you look on our list under Costa Hellenis, Kasper Halttunen, he played in Liga last year. He went to London this year in the O. He's like a sniper. He's a goal scorer. Okay. He's really good. And like Lenny Haminaaho, he was a second-round pick as well last year in New Jersey. Dude, like the first 10 games of the Liga season, like 8 goals. This kid's just coming out flying. Really good shot. I think these guys are going to make a huge impact for Finland this year. The one thing with them is, like, besides this Arttu Karki kid, I don't know how much, like, offense to expect from the back end at least. So I think if they're going to want to get a lot of offense, it's going to have to come up from up front.
Yeah.
But they do have the talent up front that can get it done, if that makes sense. Their goaltending as well, in my perspective, better than Sweden's for sure. I would actually say it's somewhat like close to on par with Canada's.
Okay.
To be quite honest. This Emil Vinny kid, he's available to go in the draft this year. I don't really know if he's going to play, but this Nicholas Coco kid, he's drafted by the Kraken. He was a second-round pick a couple years ago. I think he's going to be their guy, their starter. And I don't think their goaltending is that much different than Canada's, to be quite honest. They got a couple guys that are kind of having like hot starts to the season this year.
Canada's goaltending, when I was talking to somebody at work the other day, they were not liking it.
I don't know, man. It's like it's weird because you usually get guys that are kind of draft eligible guys or already drafted, but that's not the case this year. But I don't really know if that's the answer anyway, right? Like last year, look what happened. They start off with Benjamin Gaudreau, drafted by San Jose. He kind of shits the bed. Thomas Milic comes in. He's undrafted, wins the tournament. He gets drafted. You know what I mean? So. Yeah. I'm not really too concerned about that. I think it's a lot, at least this year, on recency bias, to be quite honest. But I don't know. It's weird. I haven't really watched those two Quebec guys play a lot. I know Ratslav a lot more, but I don't even think Ratslav is like an option, to be quite honest. I think he's coming in as their third goalie.
Yeah. Let's move on to Team Czechia now. Top forward for them. Who do you have?
I think Yuri Kulich, dude.
Okay.
I fuck, man. He's played in Buffalo a bit this year. He's been in Rochester in the A, like scoring at will. Even in the playoffs last year, Rochester got out second round. He was great for them. I think eventually in the NHL, like we're talking about like a consistent 25 goal scorer at least. He's a big kid as well. He was on the team last year. Obviously, they went on a huge run. I will say the one thing with this Czechia team is I don't think they're as talented as last year.
No.
I think they've lost some guys that have like aged out almost that are kind of going to like hurt them a little bit. They still have some guys that were draft eligible.
For me, Jurček's the big one. Adam Jurček. That's the big guy.
That's obviously David's brother in Columbus. He kind of plays the same kind of style. He's got a big shot. He's not the greatest skater. This is such a heavy D draft this year that we don't really even know where he's going to go. I would
think lottery.
I think in the top 15. I've seen him as early as 6. I've seen him as late as like 12. So there's a lot of D. It's kind of just like who in that range prefers what. You know what I mean?
Right hand shot, left hand shot. Yeah.
The one thing with this team is I don't think they're nearly as deep as they were last year. Look, Adam Zidlicki was a guy in Kitchener. I'm really surprised that he was able to make this team, to be quite honest. I don't really think that... Like, I don't think last year he was even considered. You know what I mean? So it's just, I kind of think they've taken a step back. They still have some pretty decent players, though, like Shapovalov. He's a draft pick by Vegas. He plays in the OHL for Saginaw. Thomas Hamara, he's coming back. Former Ranger. He's coming back from last season as well. He's not the most offensive guy, though, right? Besides this, it's just like they don't really have
this team
that much talent on their team, dude. I don't see them really being that much of a threat, to be quite honest with you. And I know that could come back to kind of bite me a bit considering how good they were last year. But I think looking back at last year, to be honest with you, a lot of people didn't kind of give them as much respect going into the tournament, looking back at their roster. And I don't think that they're going to do the same thing. I will say, though, I like their goaltender, Michael Herbal.
Yeah.
Huge, dude.
Yeah.
This kid's 6'7", goes to UMass, was drafted around that same range as Fowler and Augustine last year. So I think that's the one thing I'm really interested in this year is that we're seeing a lot of goaltenders that were recently picked in the draft. Slovakia has one as well that we'll talk about in a bit. Especially, too, with the Habs picking Fowler. It was almost, if you look back at the draft last year, the first goalie was Adam Guyan, who went early in the second round. And then there was like about 5 or 6 goalies that went to the early third round. And Jacob Fowler, it was almost like Montreal wanted a goalie in the third round, and he was like the only guy like out of these guys that were left. And to be honest with you, he's been outplaying every single guy in this draft. So I'm kind of curious to see how these goalies perform on this stage, like knowing like especially in Fowler's case, he's like, well, every single one of you went before me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's going to be a lot of proof for a lot of these guys in this tournament.
Especially his partner, Augustine. He went like a whole round before him, right? So that's one thing, especially as a goaltender, I'm very kind of intrigued and interested to see. But like, do you have any thoughts on this Czechia team? Obviously, we're not too familiar with the whole team or anything like that. I more or less know a lot of these guys that are in the CHL.
Yeah.
Besides like a couple one-offs that are not in like Adam Jurček and stuff like that.
For me, it's just going to be Adam Jurček really looking at this team, like seeing what he can do. Because for me,
he'd be that anchor offensively.
Yeah, and like how much will this affect its draft rankings? Because like for a lot of these players, like as we mentioned, how deep this defensive class is for this draft, like this tournament's going to do a lot for this for these players' draft rankings. So like Adam Jurček, if he comes out as a great tournament, then like we are talking about him going top 10. If he comes out as a bad tournament, we're talking about him going more probably in that like
dropping a little
12 to 15 range maybe, right? So I'm looking forward to watching him on this team. Let's move on to Team Germany though. Honestly, even like I'm not saying this team looks amazing or anything, but like three NHL draft picks on this team. Which is like
it's actually
for Germany, man. Like,
so
I think
the thing is that's going to be different about Germany compared to other years is like
you don't have that top line.
No, and they didn't really last year either, right? Like they don't have that Stützle, they don't have Peterka or Reichel. You know what I mean?
Seider.
Any of those guys, Seider. So I mean, it's going to be a lot more difficult for them. I don't really follow too much of their team. I do kind of know these draft picks. I'd say like their best player is Julian Lutz, who is drafted by the Coyotes. I think he's playing in the USHL right now, actually. He moved over from Dell just to kind of get familiar with the North American game. Not too sure if he's like committed to a school or anything like that, but I think he's easily coming in as their best player.
Yeah.
The other guy I'm kind of familiar with is Kevin Bicker. He's a really late pick to Detroit. I don't really even seeing him having much of an NHL future, to be quite honest. He's not even performing very well in Dell, so he's definitely one of their better players, but I don't think he's too much of a threat. And the other NHLer is Norwin Panoka. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but he's German defenseman, like really kind of more of like a shutdown guy. I don't know. Even last year, like they had a goalie that was drafted to Carolina, Nikita Klopp. Their goaltending this year, I think their guy's like Simon Wolf, and he was like their second, third goalie last year. So it's like they're taking a step back in that regards. I like he's not drafted, this kid Moritz Elias. He's actually like a pretty little creative player, plays in the DEL. So I think, at least in my opinion, those are the guys that at least I'm going to be keeping an eye on. I just see Germany more or less. They're probably going to beat the bottom team, get in. I don't see them making it past the quarterfinals.
Them, Latvia, Norway are like the sort of bottom tier teams.
Yeah.
Let's just cover off that whole pool right now. Let's move
Latvia and Norway.
Let's move on to Latvia. It looks like
so Latvia is kind of the same thing. They got a couple guys that are in the NHL, only 2 though.
Looks like one's draft eligible this year as well.
Yeah, Matiko, Matiko. He's actually I'd expect him to go like second to third round this year.
Okay.
He's a little, he's pretty creative, plays in the QMJHL. Not really like a lot of high-end skill, to be quite honest with you, but he's producing pretty well. I don't know if he's really their best player. Their other two guys are Dans Loke Mellis and Sandis Vilmanis. So Loke Mellis plays in the NCAA. Vilmanis plays in the OHL. They're producing a decent amount. Vilmanis is putting up more production in like the CHL than like Loke Mellis is in NCAA. But I mean, I would argue personally that it's probably easier to produce in CHL than it is like university hockey. At least in my opinion, to be honest with you.
Without a doubt.
You see a lot more guys putting up like more point per game, over point per game, stuff like that. Those are the three guys that I would keep an eye on, to be honest with you. I don't really know anyone else on their roster, really. But I see them kind of competing in the relegation game.
Yeah. Let's move on to Norway, another one of those relegation game teams.
So Norway.
Couldn't name one player.
I know even less about Norway. The one guy I will say to keep an eye on,
Nygaard?
Michael Brandsted Nygaard. This kid is actually good, man. Like, he would make a lot of these World Junior teams. I think he is by far their best player. I'm curious, dude, because if he is able to kind of take over, I'm not saying the tournament, but it's some of these games. If
he were like Timmy Stu did back in his
exactly,
World
if
Juniors,
he is looking like the best player in a couple games, I swear to you, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about him in the top 10.
Okay.
He is that talented of a player. It kind of sucks that he's put on a team that's not, and he's from a place where obviously it's not really good. But I will say though, dude, like, we're talking about growing the game. The only other guy in the NHL from Norway is Zuccarello.
Freddie.
He's from Denmark.
Oh yeah, I'm an idiot. Ignore that.
No, well, I mean it's close though. It's not like
we're cutting that out.
It's not a ridiculous guess at all. But it's like, yeah, I kind of hope he was on a better team. But at the same time, it's like
it's growing the game.
Yeah, dude. If he ends up having a really good tournament, being really good, this is a good thing, right? So I'm kind of curious to see how he does. I'm not going to specifically go out and watch Norway play, but if they're ever playing like a team that I'm interested in, like, I'm definitely going to tune in to see how this kid can do.
Yeah. Oh, let's move on. Team Slovakia.
So I actually don't mind their team. I don't think they're like a top team by any means, but if we're talking about like a sleeper team that could surprise,
I'd say they're in that second.
I would say that they're actually like comparable to like maybe the way Czechia was last year.
Okay.
They actually have some decent players, obviously from the OHL. Philip Massar, great pick this year, dude. Dalibor Dvorsky.
Don't get you going on that guy. Eh?
I know, Habs prospect. Dalibor Dvorsky, dude, went 10th overall last year to Sudbury.
Tearing up the O this year.
He's unbelievable. Yeah. I'd be keeping an eye on him. Some other guys on here on defense, Maxim Sturbak. He's probably one of their best, if not probably their best defenseman. He went to Buffalo last year in the draft. I think they still kind of lack high-end offense from like their D. I think Dvorsky's going to be able to provide that, and Massar on offense.
You got this Samuel Honzak.
Yeah, so
Calgary Flames draft pick. I actually like him a fair bit. He is pretty good. He's a big centerman.
This is what I mean about this team is that they have a lot of guys that can produce. Martin Mishiak, too, he went pretty high in the draft last year in the first 3 rounds. They have a fair bit of guys that are drafted to the NHL. They have a couple guys eligible. Jakub Chromiak.
Where's his like projection in this year's draft?
Chromiak, he's fallen like fucking bricks, dude. He was supposed to go like second, third round, but now I'd say like he's not really producing much offensively from a defenseman. I'd say he's a later round pick, but hey, I mean, how many Slovaks are projected to be later round picks this year?
Couldn't name.
I gotta cut that.
What about this Luka
Radiojevic? I think he's like a potential.
That's a fucking name.
I think he's a projected. I would say right now could go in the first round in 25, and I think that's the reason why he's on the team.
Yeah, well, you don't see too many 2025.
No,
looking at the stock, I think this is the first 2025 draft eligible player I've seen.
He actually is like a pretty. Actually, like talking about like offense from the back end, like he might be the guy that's going to be like doing it, especially as a young player. Their goaltending, Adam Guyan. I don't know if you remember him from last year.
Was he the guy that was playing the USPHL or something?
The USHL.
USHL.
He still does.
I do remember him.
He still does.
Yeah.
He was the one where, you remember Bedard did that dangle in OT?
Yeah.
He was the net for that. He is sick, though, dude. He was the guy I was talking about. He was the first goalie off the board last year.
Yeah.
And he was drafted as an overager. So he's going to help them out, man. He's going to keep them in a lot of games. This guy's super flexible, kind of like 6'2", 6'3", like pretty big frame. Really like his game, to be quite honest with you. So I think...
Are they taking 4 goalies?
Honestly, I updated this. Some of these I updated before. There is a possibility. There is, though. A lot of them, it was more like I put their preliminary 1, 2, and then deleted guys as it went on. Honestly, I may have forgot to delete a goalie off here, but for goaltenders, we're talking about Adam Guyan's their guy. 100% he's their guy.
He was good last year, man.
Yeah.
Let's move on to my motherland.
Final team here? Is it?
Is this the final team already?
Yeah, because we already talked about U.S.
Team Switzerland. One drafted player on this team. Honestly, dude, I could not name a guy on this team.
Dude, he's good, though. Have you watched him play? Robin Dionisio?
I haven't seen him play.
Dude, you got to watch his highlights. He's like... So last year, he played for Windsor. And I got to watch him play against Kitchener in the playoffs. And, dude, he's like such a high-skilled defenseman from the back end. Mid-game in the playoffs against Kitchener, he got put up to forward, dude. And he was playing with Shane Wright.
Dude, what?
Dude, mid-game, Mark Savard put him to forward. He was playing left wing in the third period, and he scored.
He's playing defenseman, though, still.
I would say probably, but, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't score goals if he's moved up. Because he can play the wing, dude.
Damn.
So I think he's undoubtedly their best player. Honestly, man, it's to the point where, if you put him on forward, he might be their best forward. He's that high skilled. It's he's not very fast or anything, but he's got sick hands. Such a nice shot. He was drafted as an overager to Anaheim last year. Dude, I was watching this guy play in the playoffs, and I was like, his draft year was this past year. He didn't get drafted. I'm like, how the fuck is this kid not drafted? He's so high. Dude, it was honestly to the point where he was almost the most skilled guy on the ice last year in the playoffs.
With a team that had Shane Wright on the team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was more noticeable than Wright was when I was there. 100% he was. He was playing with it when he got moved up to forward. The other guy to keep an eye on this year, I didn't write it in here, but I'm highlighting it now so you can see it. Daniil Usnikov.
Okay, with the Zurich Lions.
He's playing pro right now. He's eligible this year. I've seen some rankings with him going in round 1 late. I don't personally think that's going to happen, though. I'd say probably second or third round, but he's coming in as their best defenseman.
High draft pick.
I'm kind of curious to see who their goaltender is going to be this year. This Alessio Baglieri kid, he played for the Steelheads last year. I don't think there was really any spot for him, or anywhere in the O, so he's playing in Europe. And then this Ewan Huey. He plays for Regina in the WHL. Don't think he was on the team last year, though, with Bedard. So I think for goaltending, those guys are going to be the ones battling it out for this job. Switzerland, to be quite honest with you, I think they're in that tier with Germany and
Latvia.
I would probably say they're better. I'd say Latvia, Norway's in their own tier.
Okay.
And then starting from the bottom, I'd say Latvia, Norway, and then probably Germany, Switzerland. And then honestly, I'd probably say Czechia, and then Slovakia, Finland, Sweden. And then we're talking about Canada, US, to be quite honest with you. So at the end of the day, obviously we went through all these teams. I'm just trying to get you guys a little bit more familiar with some of these players. I just follow a lot of prospects.
I felt like I learned fucking so much here. Watching.
Well, and it's just you now you're vividly going to watch this tournament, right? So a lot of these guys are going to come to mind. There's going to be some guys that we didn't even talk about here that are probably going to be such a huge surprise in this tournament. But these are the guys that I'm personally kind of excited to watch. It's interesting to see, right? Because it's the draft happens, and then the next year you get so many guys that were just drafted, and it's crazy to see how much 6 months can make a difference in how you would rank these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We might see a third or fourth rounder that was taken in the draft this past year, outplaying a guy that was drafted in the first round. You know what I mean? So that's personally what I love to see. For these kids too, it's just dude, how many of these kids would we say are not drafted or or not NHL property. Like
I'd say about like 90%.
So the thing is that
okay, no, not 90%.
that's pretty. That's pretty.
I'd say probably like.
I'd say at least 65.
I'd say like 75, maybe 75 to 80.
And the thing is, it's like, dude, this is the best thing that they're ever going to experience in their life.
Yeah.
The highest thing. You know what I mean? You hear about guys who play in the NHL. What do they look back on? World Juniors, Memorial Cup. You know what I mean? So this is a special moment for all these guys. I'm still cheering, obviously, for Canada no matter what. I'm just convinced they don't have the best roster, but dude,
I'm with you. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's one fucking game.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
It's one tournament too. Like
we could be talking about USA getting out in the quarterfinals. Yeah. You never know what can happen in these tournaments. I'm really excited to get going. Canada, they're playing Finland right off the bat. I like that, to be honest. Last year, they weren't ready to play Czechia that first day, and they got pumped.
Yep.
So they got to come out guns blazing this year. And I think the more or less, I'm really interested to see how Sweden does on home ice. They haven't been able to take the reins to win one of these tournaments after being such a powerhouse in the round robin all these years, but they're on home ice this year. I just wonder if it's going to be different. It's going to be really interesting to watch, though, with these European fans.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun tournament to watch. Of course, we'll be back next week. I'm looking at the calendar right now. I'm thinking maybe we'll record a day later and upload on the Saturday next week, because then we can talk about a bit more of what's going on at the World Juniors, where if we record Thursday, upload Friday, like we're only going to talk about that first day. So I'm thinking next week we'll probably be uploading Saturday or Sunday, and we'll be really talking about the whole first half of this tournament. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's gonna be a blast. But yeah, thanks for tuning in this episode, everybody.